Parents of twins, if you're familiar with far-off drop-offs...
Dad, stop, right here.
Or get DMs about what's for dinner, you may be experiencing tween milestones. For your son or daughter, these can start at age 9. HPV vaccination, a type of cancer prevention against certain HPV-related cancers, can start then too.
For most, HPV clears on its own. But for those who don't clear the virus, it can cause certain cancers later in life.
Embrace this phase. Help protect them in the next.
Ask their doctor today about HPV vaccination. Brought to you by Merck.
Yes, that's me. Good morning. It is Monday, April 7th. Your forecast from the 77 WABC Weather Center. It's not going to be a great week. I'll just point that out right now. Showers today, high 45. Tonight and overnight, cloudy, low 38. And then Tuesday, it'll be sunshine, but still on the cooler side, high 45. If you are walking out the door with us right now, 47 and cloudy in Riverhead out on Long Island. It's 46 and cloudy in Freehold over in New Jersey. And it's 43 and cloudy right outside our Midtown studios.
The top 5 at 5.
It could be another very ugly day on Wall Street. The Pope makes a public appearance. An 11-year-old comes to the rescue in Brooklyn. BB's going back to the White House. And an all-female pro football team makes its debut in New Jersey. All right, let's get into it. Let's start about the U.S. stock futures overnight plunging. An indication of what may be to come this morning starting 9:30. Could be a really rough week on Wall Street. President Trump yesterday talking about what might take place, and he says he's watching those numbers.
Now, what's going to happen with the market, I can't tell you, but I can tell you our country has gotten a lot stronger. And eventually, it'll be a country like no other. It'll be the most dominant country economically in the world.
So the Dow, S&P 500, NASDAQ futures, they all fell roughly 4% overnight. The Dow saw back-to-back losses, of course, over 1,500 points for the first time ever last week, while the S&P took a 6% drop Friday, the worst since the pandemic in March of 2020. The market slammed following those continued concerns the president has ignited in this global trade war in regards to his new tariffs. The president talking about this aboard Air Force One yesterday.
Hundreds of billions of dollars is pouring into our country. On a monthly basis, it's pouring. It's already started because I put tariffs on. And eventually it's going to straighten out, and our country will be solid and strong again.
All right, so he's talking about some short-term pain for some long-term gain. Now, will the markets buy into that? The president yesterday also blaming prior leadership for the issues we're having today.
We have been treated so badly by other countries because we had stupid leadership that allowed this to happen. They took our businesses, they took our money, they took our jobs.
Now, the White House had everybody out over the weekend talking about this. The Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, taken to the news shows, says the power of the U.S. needs to be reset, and that's what this global tariffs are doing.
If we had a war and we can't build a ship, we can't fly a plane, we can't build our own planes, we don't have our own semiconductors. This is what the president is here to fix for America.
Now, what Lutnick was saying over the weekend is that if we kept things going the way they were now, eventually, he said, the rest of the world would have owned the U.S. And so he says the president's trying to stop that from happening.
The United States of America is going to protect the people who invest in America. Trillions and trillions of dollars, you heard the president speak about it, are coming to invest in America. This is the economy of the world. We are the consumer of the world.
Okay, so we go from the Commerce Secretary to the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent. He was out on the news shows, NBC's Meet the Press yesterday, talking about the tariffs as well.
We get these short-term market reactions from time to time. The market consistently underestimates Donald Trump. In 2016, the night President Trump won, the market crashed. And it turned out he was going to be the most pro-business president in over a century, maybe in the history of the country.
So Bessent says we need to just take some time and watch this adjustment take place, and he promises everything will come roaring back.
And this is an adjustment process. We saw with President Reagan when he brought down the great inflation and we got past the Carter malaise that there was some choppiness at that time.
Okay, so if that's not enough, the White House also put out the Chief of Staff, Stephen Miller. He says too many countries employ slave labor to make their goods, and the U.S. pays the price with trade deficits.
We do not need a global race to the bottom that says that American workers have to earn the same wages and work in the same conditions as the poorest workers in the third world.
And like the other White House members that were out on the news shows over the weekend, he claims America's been ripped off by other countries for too long.
The United States is 36% of global consumption, and we're more than 25% of the world's economy. That means we get to set the rules and terms for international trade.
All right. Meanwhile, though, we're all looking at our 401k going, oh, my God. Maybe you should just not look at it if you don't need the money anytime soon. So it was Thursday. It was down, 1,600 points. Friday over 2,000 points. And overnight it looks really bad again. Of course, Wolf Alwoodall be with us at the opening bell, of course, at 9:30 this morning. 5:05, out to Brooklyn. A bloody scene there over the weekend.
Multiple people, including several children, are among the victims in a brutal attack in the Diker Heights neighborhood. A man wielding a meat cleaver went after several people, including a woman and 3 girls ages 8 to 16. It happened around 10:30 on Sunday morning. Horrific images from the scene show one of the girls covered head to toe in blood. The victims were taken to the hospital. One of the younger victims is in critical condition. Cops responding to a 911 call opened fire on the attacker. He was also rushed to the hospital with life-threatening injuries. I'm Liz Radabali for 77 WABC News.
WABC News Time 5:06. Let's go overseas. Ukrainian President Zelensky criticizing the U.S. Embassy for its disappointing response to recent Russian attacks.
On Friday, Russian missiles killed 16 people and injured 50 more in a central Ukrainian city. Zelensky said the embassy's response was, quote, surprisingly disappointing, accusing officials of being afraid to mention Russia when commenting on the attacks. The U.S. ambassador to Ukraine said the airstrikes were horrific, but did not specifically say the missiles were from Russia. I'm Lisa Carton.
Israeli Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu due to visit the White House today to discuss new U.S. tariffs imposed on his country.
President Trump told reporters aboard Air Force One on Friday that he had invited Netanyahu for discussions. The talks will also likely include Israel's war in Gaza. Netanyahu's visit could mark the first attempt by a foreign leader to try and negotiate a deal on tariffs. I'm Mark Mayfield.
WABC News Time 5:08. Over the weekend, a federal judge ordering the U.S. to return a man mistakenly deported to El Salvador last month. The Trump administration has said it was an error when Abrego Garcia was deported after being arrested.
I want to say thank you to everyone that has helped us, that has supported us in fighting this, and we will continue fighting for Kilmer, for my husband.
That's the wife of the Salvadorian national who's accused of being a member of MS-13. Garcia's attorneys denied the allegation in 2019. They say he was granted protective status.
The thing that was most striking for me about the hearing was that the attorney for the government, who handled the matter very professionally, had so few answers to the judge's factual questions. Over and over again, he stated that his clients had not provided him with certain information, that his clients had not provided him with certain documents. Really, all just goes to show how little importance the federal government has given to this case.
Now, the White House pushing back against that narrative. Attorney General Pam Bondi says President Trump will obey the law if it rules against him. She's talking about all these cases, and we'll get into that El Salvadorian case in just a moment. But she was on Fox News yesterday. She says the president is doing what he said he would do.
No, the president is going to comply with the law. He was overwhelmingly elected by an overwhelming majority of the United States citizens to be our commander-in-chief, and that's what he's been doing.
She was on the news shows over the weekend. The attorney general says the real constitutional crisis in the U.S. right now is the fact that there's over 170 lawsuits filed against the White House. Bondi says the Trump administration maintains that Maryland man who the Justice Department said mistakenly deported was an MS-13 gang member, and it's her directive to get people like him out of the country.
They're popping up every single day, trying to control his executive power, trying to control where he believes our tax dollars should be allocated. ICE has testified, members of ICE, that he is is an MS-13 gang member. And the defense, his lawyers, have argued, well, he should be here because he was studying to be an electrician.
Let's go down to the U.S. southern border. Illegal immigration at the southern border just turned into a trickle, but it hasn't completely stopped. In Texas, state troopers say they're busy trying to track down the smugglers who remain very active there.
We're making about 100 arrests a week in Operation Lone Star because the smuggling is continuing.
Yeah, that's Colonel Freeman Martin, who heads the Texas Department of Public Safety, says migrants are aware of the recent policy changes. If they're caught, they'll be deported. And for that reason, he says they're disappearing into the shadows.
People and drugs going north. It's small numbers. The smuggling prices have tripled, and nobody's looking for Border Patrol to turn themselves in. They're all trying to get away.
Yeah. 512. Tesla owners say their cars are being attacked still by people who hate Elon Musk. Of course, Elon Musk owns Tesla. Jason Bedell, he lives north of San Francisco, and he says he doesn't think police are doing enough to protect Tesla owners, so he himself is offering a $25,000 reward for the person who vandalized his Cybertruck. Now, those Cybertrucks could be like close to $100,000.
Slashed all four of the tires and then went to the front of the truck, picked up a giant cement brick, threw it 2 or 3 times against the front windshield.
Yes, Jason says he put up the offer because cops are moving slower than he expected. There are now 50 reported attacks on Tesla vehicles and dealerships and charging stations across the country. The biggest, of course, was that March firebombing of the dealership in Las Vegas. Thankfully, they caught up with the creep involved in that one. Both Musk and Attorney General Pam Bondi have described this as terrorism. Jason Bedell, whose Cybertruck was attacked, of course, agrees with that.
Most of the people that embraced EVs and bought these vehicles were fellow Democrats.
Well, and that's the issue, of course, is the people who bought these Teslas tend to be left of center, Democrats, and those are the people who are very unhappy with Elon Musk. And so then you have the people who are attacking the cars, my guess not Tesla owner themselves, but all of this is not great for business for Elon Musk. But either way, nobody should be attacking these cars.
And to take this out on your neighbors and
Yeah.
fellow Democrats, it's the wrong people. It's
Yeah.
the wrong victims.
Yeah, he's right about that. 513, down to Washington. Congressman Al Green, remember him? He's the one who interrupted the president during one of his speeches before Congress. Now he plans to impeach President Trump. That's what he was saying over the weekend.
I understand that he is a Goliath. But my friends, for every Goliath, there is a David. This David is going to bring articles of impeachment against you within the next 30 days.
So the Texas Democrat was speaking at that anti-Trump rally that took place in D.C. this weekend, telling protesters that the Trump administration and President Trump doesn't deserve to be president. Thousands taking part in anti-Trump protests, not just in Washington, D.C., but they were all over the country. There was a big one here in the city as well.
When Trump and Musk and Johnson and their minions are signing unconstitutional executive orders, unconstitutionally firing people, trying to pass an unjust budget. When they are doing this, we must say, take your hands off of our democracy.
Now, this was all part of a nationwide day of action on Saturday organized by a group called Hands Off 2025. It included nearly 1,000 protesters who marched outside White House border czar Tom Homan's house.
They were calling for the release of 3 children and their mother who were detained by ICE agents at a dairy farm last month. The march began with a rally organized by the Jefferson County Democratic Committee, including a written statement by New York Attorney General Letitia James, who said she was, quote, heartbroken and angry by the family's detainment. I'm Jim Forbes.
One of the other people speaking out was Senator Cory Booker. Well, 25 hours apparently wasn't enough. We'll hear from him in just a moment. But first, 5:15, let's head over to the 77 WABC Sports Desk. Happy Monday. Good morning, Justin Allen.
Happy Monday. Good morning to you, Noam Laden. Start here on the diamond out in Queens. Pete Alonso hit a go-ahead single in the 3rd inning, and the Mets beat Toronto 2-1 for their first series sweep of the Blue Jays in 24 years. New York extended its winning streak to 4 by taking 3 in a row. From the Jays, David Peterson, Max Kranick, and Reed Garrett, A.J. Minter, and Edwin Diaz combined for a 4-hitter against the Blue Jays. Coming up next for the Mets, they'll open up a 3-game set at home tonight against the Miami Marlins. First pitch is scheduled for 7:10 p.m. Kodai Senga slated to start for New York. In Pittsburgh, the Yankees couldn't pull off the sweep of the Pirates, dropping the finale by a score of 5-4. Up next for the Yanks, they'll open up a 3-game series at Detroit this afternoon. Left-hander Carlos Rodon set to take the hill for a 3:10 p.m. first pitch. To the NBA at the Garden, OG Anunoby scored 19 of his 32 points in a perfect third quarter to keep up the best scoring stretch of his career, even with Jalen Brunson returning to New York's lineup. As the Knicks beat the Phoenix Suns 112-98, Brunson had 15 points and 6 assists after missing 15 games with a sprained right ankle that he sustained exactly a month ago. The Knicks improved to 15-28, giving them consecutive 50-win seasons for the first time since having 4 in a row from the 1991-92 season through 1994 to the 95 season. Holding on to the 3 seed in the East, the Knicks are healthy for a final week in which they will play Cleveland, Boston, and potential first-round opponent Detroit. They'll host Boston next, come tomorrow night. In Brooklyn, the Nets got handled by the visiting Toronto Raptors. The final score 120-109. Up next for Brooklyn, they'll continue their homestand come tomorrow night when they welcome in the New Orleans Pelicans. And to Final Four action over the weekend on Saturday, Nome, final between Florida and Auburn. Saw Florida beat Auburn 79-73. Auburn was leading at halftime, but couldn't finish the job against Florida. And then the big one here, Duke against Houston. Man, this was a great game. Duke up by as much as 15 throughout this game, and Houston roars all the way back, and they beat Duke 70-67. Tonight, 8:50 p.m. tip-off between Florida and Houston for the national championship from San Antonio. You get Florida as 1.5-point favorites there.
Can they beat Florida? I think they can, right? After that, after beating, I didn't think they would be able to take Duke down, and they did.
And to be honest, I mean, this starting line here, 1.5. I thought this would be a little bit more for Florida. So clearly, Vegas is in on Houston here. I mean, they were definitely underdogs against Duke, and barring that crazy ending, man, I mean, Duke comes away with that. So I mean, Houston's riding high. How can he not be after a win like that? No.
So you're telling me to take Houston? That's what I was asking.
I said no such thing.
Oh, okay.
I said no such thing. No, I think Florida comes away with this one. I think Florida's too good. So I'm taking Florida. Out in Elmont as well here, Nome, big news out of the NHL. Alex Ovechkin scored his record-breaking 895th career goal, but the Islanders beat the Capitals 4-1. With the goal number 895, Ovechkin passed Hall of Famer Wayne Gretzky to become the NHL's all-time goal-scoring leader, with Gretzky and NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman in attendance. The game came to a standstill as players and fans celebrated the historic moment. Congratulations to Alex Ovechkin. That is your Sports Gnome, and I'm Justin Ellick on 77 WAB.
Hey, business owners, make your cash secure again with Secure Cash LLC. Transporting your business's cash safely in armored trucks. SecureCashLLC.com.
WABC News Time 5:20. Let's go overseas. Pope Francis has made his first public appearance since his discharge from the hospital 2 weeks ago.
Pope Francis attended the Jubilee Mass for the sick entering St. Peter's Square at the Vatican in a wheelchair. The 88-year-old pontiff gave his blessing to the faithful as the celebrant. Pope Francis told the crowd, quote, "Have a good Sunday, everyone. Thank you so much." A text released by the Vatican said Francis is praying for doctors, nurses, and health workers who are not always helped to work in adequate conditions and sometimes even victims of aggression. The pontiff's voice sounded stronger than when he addressed well-wishers outside of Gemelli Hospital on the day of his release, March 23rd, after a 5-week hospital stay. I'm Lisa Carton.
Disgraced former Cardinal Theodore McCarrick, who once served as Archbishop of Washington, died last week at the age of 94.
McCarrick was found guilty by the Vatican in 2019 of sexually assaulting both children and adults. He was defrocked by Pope Francis that same year, making him the first American cardinal to be expelled from the Catholic priesthood for abuse. McCarrick faced several civil and criminal cases, but a judge ruled in 2023 that he was incompetent to stand trial because of dementia. McCarrick had always claimed that he was innocent. I'm Mark Mayfield.
All right, let's go live to Tel Aviv on our newsmaker line from jns.org. One of their fine correspondents, Ruthie Bloom. Good morning, Ruthie.
Good morning, Noam.
Glad to have you on. So, big day. The Prime Minister, it's today that he's meeting at the White House, correct, with the President, or is it tomorrow?
That's correct.
It's today.
Today, according to reports here, it'll be 8 p.m. Israel time. which will be about 1 p.m. your time.
So tell me what this meeting is about. Obviously, I'm sure part of it is going to be about getting the hostages out, figuring out an end game in terms of Gaza, but they're also going to be talking about tariffs, correct?
Correct. Well, that's a good question. Prime Minister Netanyahu, this was actually a surprise kind of visit last minute because Netanyahu was in Hungary meeting with Viktor Orban. And that was a very significant meeting and all that. And then the three of them had Trump and Orban and Netanyahu had a three-way phone conversation. And then it was announced that Netanyahu was going to go directly from Budapest to Washington. That was not scheduled originally. So the idea was, and it was reported, that Netanyahu wants to discuss with Trump the 17% tariff that he's going to impose on Israel, and it's quite high, etc. But the question is that really the purpose of this visit? And it's doubtful. I would say Iran will be the main focus. Of course, the hostages, yes, Gaza, but Iran is the key issue here because we're seeing a lot of movement of U.S. Weapons, aircraft carriers to the region. We know that there are 6 B-2 stealth bombers positioned in Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean. So there seems to be a lot of movement in the direction of a potential attack on Iran if Iran doesn't come to the negotiating table.
And so what's the thought? I mean, obviously this is huge if there's an attack on Iran. I imagine one of the first places they would respond to would be Israel, no?
Well, yes, but we did see they have attacked Israel twice. Over the past year, there were 2 Iranian attacks on Israel, one in April, one in October. But actually, they did no damage. It was quite surprising, even though there was massive missile attacks. Israelis all were in shelters. These missiles were all intercepted, and Israel then launched an attack on Iranian facilities and took out, what we understand is left Iran very vulnerable because we took out their air defenses. So when you say, yes, it'll be dangerous if Iran attacks Israel, but I think Israel is preparing for that scenario.
Talking with correspondent Ruthie Bloom, who works for jns.org, great correspondent for them. Bibi Netanyahu headed to the White House today. I'm sure some of the talk will obviously be about what's taking place in Gaza. Is there an end game? What are people talking about in Israel in terms of the latest? The ceasefire obviously has fallen apart. What's happening now?
Well, what's happening now is, for example, last night, Israel time, the Hamas launched 10 rockets on southern Israel, Ashkelon, Ashdod. 5 were intercepted, maybe 5 landed. It's not quite clear, but a few people were injured by shrapnel. And Netanyahu, hearing this, said, okay, we've got to step up our attacks in Gaza. And the first thing that the IDF tackled was the launcher from where those 10 rockets were fired. Now, we have stepped up attacks inside Gaza. The idea is to put maximum pressure on Hamas, both by military means and by withholding humanitarian aid that Hamas was stealing and selling at exorbitant prices to the residents of Gaza. Meanwhile, there are also some protests in Gaza. There are many things going on there. And there's also a bunch of the hostage families. Many of them are protesting outside various parliamentarians' homes, outside of Strategic Affairs Minister Ron Dermer's home in Jerusalem. There's a lot of hysteria going on here in every direction. But I think that the whole point is to get Hamas to release the hostages, which it was not doing. It hasn't done for about a month now. And basically the policy is no more nice guy. We can't just have an endless ceasefire where they're rearming and re-recruiting terrorists.
You know what's amazing to me as somebody who's I guess compared to you, definitely a casual observer of what's going on, is that after more than a year and a half of a war, that they still have missiles that they can fire off. Are they still sneaking them in, or are these missiles that were already there?
Well, that's a good question. I actually heard that it's a mixture, and also they're able to produce some. But what these 10 rockets could mean. Also, keep in mind that they only reached southern Israel. I mean, I say only in quotes, of course, but these are clearly not their long-range missiles that can go to Tel Aviv, etc. I think the idea is twofold. One, to flex their muscles and make it look as though they're still in business and they've got a lot of rockets. That's what I believe that salvo was about. Also, they probably want to fire off as many rockets as they can before Israel takes the remaining ones out.
All right. Ruthie Bloom is in Tel Aviv. And, of course, you and I and everybody else will be watching this meeting at the White House. That'll take place our time, 1 o'clock, between Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and President Trump. And we'll all be watching it. And we'll check in with you again, Ruthie Bloom. You can find her at jns.org. Thanks so much for coming on with us this morning.
And thank you for having me, Noam.
Of course.
It's the 77 WABC News Hour. Sponsored by Secure Cash, LLC. Talking the news with Noam Laden. All the news you need to know with Joe Nolan, traffic, Justin Ellick, sports. And now, Talking the News with Noam on 77 WABC.
Yes, that's me, 536. Good morning. It is Monday, April 7th. Your forecast from the 77 WABC Weather Center. Showers today, high 45. Tonight and overnight, cloudy, low 38. And then Tuesday, sunshine, but still on the cool side, high 45. If you are walking out the door with us right now, so happy you are. 47, cloudy in Riverhead out on Long Island. It's 46 and cloudy in Freehold over in New Jersey. And it's 41 and cloudy right outside our Midtown studio. 9, no matter where I went this weekend, meeting up with friends and family members. Everybody wanted to talk about their 401k and how awful it was. My wife lecturing me. She said, what if we had to take out money now for college education? We'd have a lot less. And well, she's, I guess, right about that. So the market's down overnight. Does not look like it could be another brutal day on the markets. Of course, we'll follow it as the market opens. And we have more from 77 WABC business reporter Joe Connolly.
Mike Stone, the purchasing manager at a plumbing supply company, says there's a rush on to get supplies that came in before tariffs.
The stress is serious as far as bringing in inventory now.
They'll have to take delivery now on 650 toilets and 650 sinks for future work, and they don't know where to put them all.
We have to go back to the developer and say, hey, look, if you want to be able to pay the prices that were quoted for the project, we're going to have to come up with some kind of game plan, whether we rent a facility or we build temporary space to be able to handle this load.
Plumbing supply manager Mike Stone says the impacts will keep multiplying if tariffs stay high.
The developer will throw his hands up because the prices are going to have to go up, and he'll walk away from the project.
Joe Connolly, 77 WABC News.
WABC News Time 540. Let's go over to Brooklyn, where a meat cleaver-wielding man stabbed and slashed 4 nieces in his Brooklyn home yesterday. He was shot by police after one of the victims was able to sort of get away, get to a phone, and call 911 for help. So the victims were 11, 13, and 16 years old. The 11-year-old girl, she was the one who called 911. This took place on 84th Street in Bensonhurst. Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch, she raced to the scene to describe what took place.
The 11-year-old caller stated that she and her siblings had been stabbed by her uncle.
She did not know her address.
Now, what cops told us is when they raced to the scene, they heard screams coming from behind the door of this home, and they forced their way into the apartment. One of the officers entered. They encountered this man standing near the entrance. He had a large meat cleaver in his hand that was covered in blood. Police say blood was also seen on the floor, walls of this home. And according to Police Commissioner Tisch, the police-involved shooting was captured on a body-worn camera.
They encountered a man standing near the entrance holding a large meat cleaver covered in blood, and they could see blood on the floor and the walls of the home. The officers ordered the man to drop the weapon several times. He refused and advanced towards them. 2 officers discharged their firearms, firing 7 total rounds between them and striking the subject, ending the threat.
So that subject she's talking about is 49-year-old Luan Chan, who apparently has a long history of mental illness. A 5th child, a boy, was able to escape the house unharmed. So the good news is the girls are all expected to survive. Their uncle, the one with the meat cleaver, he was rushed to the hospital in critical condition. Do not have an update on him, but 2 knives were recovered at the scene, including that large meat cleaver that he was holding when police arrived. 5:42 up in the Bronx, there was a shooting. Police searching for 2 men wanted for the shooting that injured 2 men inside a Wendy's. The shooting happened on the East Fordham Road location. According to the NYPD, the 2 people they're looking for came into the restaurant. There was no words apparently exchanged between the victims and the gunman. Here was one of the eyewitnesses who heard the gunfire.
I thought it was something, little like a fighting or something, but then people getting shot was like, damn. A lot of people go there just to eat and stuff, not to, get shot there.
Yeah, so what we're being told is a 27-year-old was shot in the chest and back. A 26-year-old was shot in the arm and thigh. First responders took both of them to St. Barnabas Hospital. They're in stable condition. Don't know whether the gunmen knew their victims. The police are unclear about that. They also have not caught up with these gunmen. It sounds like it's something that's targeted, but police are still not sure at this hour. 5:43. Did you see all the big protests, the anti-Trump White House protests that took place here in the city over the weekend? A bunch of cities across the country. It was a nationwide hands-off, is what they called it, demonstrations. Here in the city, it was pretty big. I mean, there was tens of thousands for sure. Started at Bryant Park, made their way down to Madison Square Park.
I'm very pro-democracy, and I'm very against what's going on in the government right now.
Hands off?
Hands off everything. Bring back Congress. Wake them up from their slumber. Find their spinal cords. Do your jobs.
Demonstrators said they're afraid of cuts to programs like Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. These demonstrations, there were about 1,200 locations in 50 states, 150 groups taking part in the one here in New York City over the weekend.
It's extremely important to be here, and there's folks all across this country who are saying, hands off of everything. All the rights that have been fought for, all of the things that make this country actually great, Elon Musk and Donald Trump are attacking.
Destruction of scientific research, Social Security.
I have friends who are undocumented, and even friends that are like citizens, but they're still worried because of the deportations.
Now, in a statement, the White House put a statement out after these demonstrations. They said President Trump's position is clear that he'll always protect Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid for eligible beneficiaries. 9 members of the Fordham University rowing team were pulled from the water on Eastchester Bay over the weekend after their boat capsized due to apparently a sudden shift in weather conditions. The boat included 9 student athletes, 8 other students, 2 coaches. School said nobody injured, but of course the water was pretty cold. They were able to pull them ashore on city property at Rodman's Neck. All of the individuals involved examined and released. One of the rowing club's boats was lost, though, in the mishap. 5:45. Let's head over to the 77 WABC Sports Desk. Of course, a big night for college basketball. Good morning, Justin Ella.
Good morning, Noam Olet, and indeed it was, and it will be again tonight. The Saturday Final Four action saw Florida beat Auburn 79-73, and then Houston surviving against Duke 70-67, roaring all the way back down as much as 15. And it'll be Houston and Florida tonight, 8:50 p.m. That's your tip-off. Florida 1.5-point favorites in the national championship game live from San Antonio. To the MLB in Queens Nome, Pete Alonso hit a go-ahead single in the third inning, and the Mets beat Toronto 2-1 for their first series sweep of the Blue Jays in 24 years. They extended their winning streak to 4 by taking 3 in a row from the Blue Jays. Peterson, Kranick, Garrett, Minter, and Diaz combined for a 4-hitter against Toronto. Coming up next for the Mets, they'll open up a 3-game set at home tonight against the Miami Marlins. First pitch scheduled for 7:10 p.m. Kodai Senga slated to start for New York. In Pittsburgh, the Yankees couldn't pull off the sweep of the Pirates, dropping the finale by a score of 5-4. Up next for the Yanks, they'll open up a 3-game series at Detroit this afternoon with left-hander Carlos Rodon set to take the hill for a 3:10 p.m. first pitch. To the NBA at the Garden, OG Anunoby scored 19 of his 32 points in a perfect third quarter to keep up the best scoring stretch of his career, even with Jalen Brunson returning to New York's lineup. And the Knicks beat the Phoenix Suns 112-98. Coming up next for the Knicks, they'll host Boston tomorrow night. They're healthy, holding on to that 3 seed in the East, healthy for the final week in which they will play Cleveland, Boston, the aforementioned Boston Celtics, and potential first-round opponent Detroit. And out in Brooklyn, the Nets, they lost to the Toronto Raptors 120-109. Up next for Brooklyn, they'll continue their homestand come tomorrow night when they welcome in the New Orleans Pelicans. And to the NHL in Elmont, Alex Ovechkin scored his record-breaking 895th career goal, but the Islanders beat the Washington Capitals 4-1. Goal number 895. Ovechkin passed Hall of Famer Wayne Gretzky to become the NHL's all-time goal-scoring leader. With Gretzky and NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman in attendance, the game came to a standstill as players and fans celebrated the historic moment. That is your Sports Gnome, and I'm Justin.
How old is Ovechkin?
How old is Alex Ovechkin? That is a good question.
I think he's 39.
39? That sounds about right.
So how many more seasons does he have in him, do we know?
I mean, he seems like one of those guys, like Jaromir Jagr is still playing out in Russia. Like he seems like these guys... these Russians, I guess you could, right? I mean, what else would you call them? But they want to play forever. I mean, this guy's going to be lacing up skates until he can't pretty much walk anymore. Like, he'll be able to not walk anymore before he won't be able to not skate anymore. Right. That's usually how these guys go. So I wouldn't be surprised if he plays, well into whether or not he's playing in the NHL. That'll remain to be seen. But, Jaromir Jagr went back over to the Czech Republic, and he's still playing well into his 50s. So there you go. That's your Sports.
Is he the number one scorer in the NHL this season?
Who?Alex Ovechkin?
Yeah.
No. But he is number one all time. There you go. That's something to write home about. That's your Sports Gnome. I'm Justin Ellick on 77 WABC.
WABC News Time 5:50. Let's go out to Brooklyn, where NYPD cops continue to look for a driver who hit a 4-year-old boy. This was in Cobble Hill the end of last week. They have not found this driver. Thank God the 4-year-old is going to be okay, but it's at one of these intersections where people have complained for years that it's just incredibly dangerous to try to cross the street. The driver was heading east on Court Street in a right turn only lane, but continued straight, hitting the boy. The driver then made a left onto Atlantic Avenue and fled. Obviously knowing that he had hit this kid, he took off.
There's a lot of people here. It's usually like drivers are pretty mindful. That just seems like a bad driver on the road.
Extremely dangerous for small children. I'm a parent of small children myself. This intersection gives me, I don't want to say constant anxiety, but it's definitely an overarching fear.
Yeah, in fact, in 2023, an 18-year-old woman was killed when a car crashed into a nearby Trader Joe's right at this intersection. The store's ramp is still boarded up, actually, now 2 years later. So neighbors say, we need a fix.
Would love to see more traffic enforcement, speed cameras, police presence, because people drive way too fast.
Yeah, so far there are pictures of this car, but no arrests have been made. Let's go out to Long Island at 5:51. It's 7 years behind bars. That's the sentence federal prosecutors are asking to be imposed on disgraced former Congressman George Santos.
7 years behind bars. That's the sentence federal prosecutors are asking to be imposed on disgraced former Congressman George Santos.
I think I just said that.
The New York Republican spun a web of lies before his shock election to Congress in 2022 related to his education, work resume, and even claimed his grandparents had fled the Nazis. After he was expelled out of Congress by his peers in December 2023, Santos was criminally charged, and last August, pleaded guilty to one count of wire fraud and another of identity theft. In a court filing, prosecutors asked for a 7-year prison sentence. They also want him to pay back more than $500,000 in fines. I'm Liz Radabali for 77 WABC News.
While we're out on Long Island, let's head over to Plainview, where parts of a road in the Long Island town now stand in memory of Omer Nutra. He's the American-Israeli hostage that was murdered by Hamas. The street sign for Captain Omer Nutra Way hangs by the entrance of the Mid-Island Jewish Community Center there. It's named after him. He was taken hostage. He was in a tank on October 7th, taken hostage. They think that he may have been killed right away. His body has not been returned, but Long Island town is honoring his memory.
I can't even begin to imagine what it felt like for the Nutras, having a son just about the same age and worrying every day that he was over there, that the same thing could happen.
Yeah, one of the main people who showed up to honor him yesterday, also there, Nassau County Legislature and Sid and Friends friend, Mazi Pilla.
He chose to put his life to defend the Jewish nation. As a former soldier, I know what that means.
Now, Omer Nutra's body was taken to Gaza, still being held by Hamas. As you might guess, it's unthinkable pain for the community, especially his parents. Here was Omer's father, who showed up for the street naming yesterday.
To see my son's name on a big sign like this, it's beyond comprehension. We've been fighting for 18 months now to get him back.
Yeah, nice job done by Nassau County lawmakers for that naming yesterday. 5:54. Doctors say early spring is the best time to begin thinking about tick prevention. Apparently last year was really bad. Peak season is June and July, and during these months, ticks put people at risk, of course, of being infected with bacteria, viruses, parasites. The obvious ways to avoid these ticks is, spray repellent on your clothes, no exposed skin. Of course, that's no fun when you're walking through the woods. DACA recommends that you routinely check yourself and your pets after you go for a walk in the woods. Here's local Dr. Bobby Pritt.
The tick is embedded. You just want to remove it as quickly as possible.
Yeah, okay. Well, I guess that's kind of obvious. I remember, aren't you supposed to put a match to the tick and that makes them come out? But apparently that's not what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to just take a tweezers and yank it out.
Touching it with a match or putting petroleum jelly on it, that might actually increase the risk of infection.
Yeah, so high season apparently is June and July. New Jersey's newest sports team making its home debut over the weekend in Paterson. I was there for. The Jersey Shore Waves are the newest addition to the Women's National Football Conference. This is a national league, and the team owner, her name is Dawn Sherman, and she wants fans to know that this is real smash-em-up football.
Women play tackle football, and they are tough.
It's its own game. There's gonna be some differences, but these women they practice hard and they play hard, so it's enjoyable to watch.
Yeah. So Saturday was the home opener at Hinchcliffe Stadium in Paterson, which they redid. It looks fantastic, by the way. 20 of the players are New Jersey natives. But they all have day jobs because you can't make a living in women's football. One of them, a lawyer, lives down the street from me.
It's nothing I ever imagined. I'm just excited for all the kids being able to, all the little girls being able to see that they're able to grow up and play tackle, and it's something that just doesn't seem attainable, I guess. But it's here. We're all here. We want to play.
Yeah, so it was fun to watch. I mean, they're hitting each other just as hard as the guys do.
Most high schools out here, we don't have the grand, look of things. So to be in such a historical stadium with all the amenities and the renovations that they put in, it's crazy. It's amazing.
Yeah, so far it hasn't been so good. They're 0-2, but there's still a whole season ahead. And we'll end with what took place at the Ziegfeld Ballroom in Midtown over the weekend. It was the annual Inner Circle show. In fact, it was the 102nd edition of this. It's a fundraiser. They raise great money for all these charities, and it's reporters, New York City reporters, who put together a show making fun of the administration, of things going on in New York City. And then the mayor has a rebuttal. He does his own show. Here's what the reporters sounded like on Saturday night.
I tell you, Eric Adams, they still could come for you, even though I had to quit. The DOJ's not through because you're bad.
Ooh, okay.
Bad.
Yeah, that's bad. All right.